All right, I am a military brat, so I moved a lot. Exotic locales like Germany and Missouri and Pennsylvania. So when I was 4 or 5, my birthday's in November, so I was one of those kids where they try to figure out if you're ready for kindergarten. So they tested me, and they said not only was I ready for kindergarten, but they were sending me directly to the first grade. And I was super proud. And I checked with my mom. Mom, so I'm a genius now? She was like, no. You know your ABCs and your name, honey, and it's Maryland, and they have really low standards. So halfway through the year, we moved to Florida, and they're much more military. They're like, we don't skip kids in grades. In kindergarten, she's going to have to go back. So I did the first half of the year in first grade. I went back and did half a year of kindergarten, and then ended up back to start out first grade, at which point they recommend skipping me to third. And my mom says, no, now you're just confusing the kid. And I checked with her, Mom, so I'm a genius now? And she said, no, honey, it's Florida. It's even worse than Maryland. So the next year we moved to North Carolina, and I was accepted into the Advanced and Gifted program. And now my mother couldn't tell me anything because that was 3 times, so I'm a genius. Doogie Howser came out that year, so I fully expected to finish Harvard by 12 and start being an OBGYN, delivering babies in emergency situations by 16, and then move on to my long-term plan, space veterinarian. Yeah. McCoy would handle the Vulcans, I would handle the puppies and the space pandas. I was psyched. So until I actually get to the Advanced and Gifted program. Now, AG is held behind the school, because that's what you do with your best and brightest. You send them to trailers several times a week for a few hours to kind of have a conjugal visit with their brain. And it was entirely boys. And even though it was the 80s and you know, women's lib had like a good run so far, the boys in the Great Dismal Swamp of North Carolina had not gotten the good word. So they were not thrilled with my presence, and I just didn't understand, why don't they like me? I love the periodic table and Buck Rogers, and I indulge in model rocketry, which is the sport of future astronauts. I just didn't get it. I couldn't get in with them. Not with my Bloom County jokes, where I made jokes about Caspar Weinberger, not on my thoughts on Robert Oppenheimer, or my puns. And I did also excellent rock crystal experiments. My mom was bettering herself at the top of her class, getting her nursing degree, and I was home rendering down all of her sugar into a saturated solution using the stove I wasn't supposed to touch. So, and what's great about that experiment is it ends in candy, and it takes 6 weeks, so I had each week of it laid out in my room, and I was like ready, and I collated my delicious data on Fridays. It was excellent. So we went away to visit my grandparents for a week during her break, which wasn't the same as mine. I come back to the Advanced and Gifted trailers, and they've done a rock crystal experiment. So first off, I'm like, hey, science posers, that's my thing. And second, it was huge. In only a week, I had rock crystal envy. I'm like, it's enormous, and it's like this purple-blue color. It's amazing. Mine were always pink. So it was some kind of kit that the teacher had ordered, and one of the other kids was like, oh, it's big because it's salt, it's not sugar. Now, here was my mistake. Sugar's edible, so sugar rock crystals are edible. Salt's food, right? So a salt rock crystal is also edible. Yeah. I had not noticed that salt is more than one thing. So table salt, sodium chloride, perfectly fine. Put it on your food. There are other kinds of salt that are really not good for you, and sodium by itself is actually an explosive when exposed to water, so keep that in the noggin. I was just amazed, and I tasted a little bit of it, which it turns out is not an approved scientific method, just so you know. And it tasted like licking a 9-volt battery. So I snagged some of it. Now, pranks were big in school that year, like cut-downs and pranks. Humiliation is always like a perennial favorite of children. So I took it to the lunchroom with me, and I slip it into 4 white, cartons of white milk, which you can get for nothing, because that's like in lunchroom trade currency. They're like pennies, like totally worthless. So I put some of this rock crystal in each one, and then proceed to try to get kids to drink it. And it's already undesirable, so some creepy nerd trying to get you to drink it, not making it more palatable. But I did learn that kids will eat just about anything for a quarter. So $1 later, I had 4 takers, and they took their sips, and they made a gross face, and it seemed to kind of work. The boys were actually surprised, like they were kind of impressed, and so I walk away from this momentary social victory off to my weekly music class where it's like a wooden block, and people are arguing over it, like not a conjugal visit with your brain. And I'm waiting in my little class, and all of a sudden the intercom comes on.
Will Katie Miller report to Principal Britt's office?
Now, I've only been to the principal for registration-related issues, and this does not seem registration-related. I walk down the hallway, and it's like a hallway in the Death Star if the Death Star was carpeted in orange shag that matches that stuff that the custodian sprinkles when kids puke. And I had recently barfed in that very same hallway, but this feeling I was getting was even worse. And I go into the principal's office, and I sit down, and Mr. Britt, Principal Britt, was a good old boy, but not the good kind. He was not a big fan of me being in the Advanced and Gifted program either, and he wasn't really a big fan of integration or Title IX, but he was a legal guy. He was going to stick with it. And he turns to me, and he says after a minute, "Do you know you just poisoned 4 children?" I said, "No." "Do you know that they're in the hospital right now having their stomachs pumped?" "No, and I didn't even know you could do that. I didn't know that was a thing." And all of a sudden, I thought that, like, not only have I done this, but I have to worry about that, and I think my mom is at her nursing shift vacuuming out some kid thinking, what horrible monster did this? And I am so stupid. And they call her, and she shows up, and the look on her face when she goes in is horrible. And I'm just planning what I'm going to do in Shawshank, and, I'm going to train rats or something, and all of a sudden I hear her yelling at the principal, and she comes out and she grabs my arm, she takes me out. It was amazing. He had just wanted to teach me a lesson. Nobody went to the hospital. The kids had a stomachache for a minute. No one had their stomach pumped. They were fine. And my mom was so diffused by her anger at him that not only did I not get in trouble, but she took me for ice cream and to see the Aristocats. That's not science. That's magic. All right? Now, they recalled that rock crystal kit, because I'm not the only rock stupid genius out there. Oppenheimer, I'm looking in your direction. Thank you.